Welcome, world, to Life, Love, and Wellness Global, a worldwide wellness movement. I am Reverend Sandy Rodgers, and as the creator of this historic event, it is my pleasure to welcome you. We come together to bring you this historic event. We have practitioners, holistic practitioners. We have medical doctors. We have spiritual individuals. This event is so lovingly dedicated to my mother, Mrs. Barbara Dean Brown. And my mother taught me like 40 plus years ago about the importance and the meaning behind herbs. And she would always say, we don't know what they putting in those pills, so you better not, get hooked on prescription drugs. And so we listened to Mom, but not all of us paid attention. My sister, bless her heart, was diagnosed recently thereafter with asthma, and she was prescribed prednisone, which is a very powerful steroid. And my sister actually got hooked on steroids, like someone out on the street kind of hooked, like on heroin or crack or something like that. And so my mom and my sister are both on the other side, living in the other dimension, but they're upholding me, and this is dedicated to their memory. So we don't want to come and make you change your mind about what you're doing. We just want to provide information to you, something different, so that you have options to choose from, so that you're not stuck. Because the environment that we now live in, the fast foods, the toxins in the air that we breathe and in the water that we drink, and the processed foods, and all of that is causing havoc on this precious body temple. So God created our bodies to heal themselves, but they can only heal themselves when they're fed and they're nourished and they're stress-free. And so the 60 or so or more experts that we have are bringing you this worldwide wellness movement in an attempt to share their testimonies and their information with you. So we have from age 14 on up. I don't even know what the oldest age is. I think 88 or something. So you see, that's a wide range of knowledge that we're bringing you. And so we hope that you come and that you get all the knowledge that you need to affect a positive change on your life, and share this with others. It's free, it's online, and so we're just so thankful that you decided to be a part of our listening community, the viewing community, and we certainly appreciate you for giving us your time of day and your energy and your efforts to being with us and to being a part of this historic event. We have pulled together people of color for you, by you, right? So we want to make sure that you understand that we too, melanated people with color, can enjoy, practice, and participate in some of these modalities that others have been doing for centuries, and that is pretty new to our community. So we talk about Qigong, we talk about meditation, yoga, spiritual work from a different perspective than religion. So we talk about the spirituality aspect. We talk about abuse in the families. We talk about all kinds of subjects because we know that in our communities there are layers and layers and layers and layers of stuff that we never talk about that's causing a negative effect on our bodies and its healing process. So we address it, whatever it is, and we hope that you will benefit from the many experts that we have, and that you walk away with lots of knowledge and lots of new information, and that you become fully empowered to share information with others. So thank you for being with us. We love you and we bless you, and we look forward to doing this again. But thanks for being here with the first one. We appreciate you.
Life, love, and wellness. Life, love, and wellness.
Reverend Dr. Sandy. I appreciate being here. It's an honor for me to have you invite me to talk about some of the areas in which I work to make the world and my community a better place. So I am the one that is honored to be here, to be under your facilitation of hearing more about my work and activities.
Well, thank you so much. So what is it that you do?
I do a number of things. My foundation is in public health and international health law and in community health and women's health. So I have 3 circles of which I have originally been trained in. And as a consequence, I've always had in women's health an area of holistic healing and approach. I've written a number of chapters. I edited a book that is around holistic health and healing, and it's always been a important part of my life. Yoga, complementary to that, and meditation. And consequently, I've grown more into the cycle of self-healing as a modality using sound. And sound has come about in a very fantastic way in my life about 15 years ago. And then more recently, I have been involved in some intensive trainings around using sound as a specific modality to assist the body in becoming more balanced, more at a state of where the cells are alive and vibrant to assist the body to become healed.
That's incredible. Why is healing the female energy so important to our community?
Well, we start off indigenously as women being many of the healers around the world. My mother, I come from a lineage of healers. My mother, my grandmother, probably my great-grandmother, don't know that far back, but I do know that there's been a sequence across the world. Gaia, Mother Earth, all of the major monuments that we have erected just even around this hemisphere are feminine identified. We can look at mountains, we can look at spirit of what the earth has to offer us. And one of my favorite places is Hawaii, and that goddess there is called Pele, the mother of creation, constantly spewing out her lava. So the feminine energy is what is important and what's needed because we are out of balance at this current state. I think that's why we are in this state of unorganized chaos that we have amidst us. We need to get more back to the feminine, more back to the divine, with an understanding of what that really means. Sometimes I think, and I want to digress a bit, but sometimes we think that put a woman in a place that will make a big difference. In my sort of black woman's thought, I understand that that's not the solution. We need to have engaged, experienced people who are committed to building community who will make a difference.
That's beautiful. A lot of times we're trained and led to believe that the woman is a second-class citizen after that male energy. But I believe and agree with you that male energy is what's brought us into this chaotic state that we find ourselves in around the world. So in addressing the feminine energy, that energy that gives life to all life, it's important that we understand the significance that women play in the world. So what type of programs do you do to empower women specifically?
Well, a broad spectrum of my work, I said initially, was trained in women's health. Really understanding the divine force, the feminist, the black womanist consciousness that we have available to us. And in that aspect, Pachamama, we have this earth that we have. My work, I think, is more channeled in a divine feminine energy. One of my most powerful instruments I use is a divine feminine gong. And so the work that I presently do on a community level is about creating communities of sound healers, sound healing per se. The majority of the people who attend my sessions are women. That has a great deal to do with the energy in the room. And by consequence, the women who are in attendance have families, may have children, and that energy that they experience is then shared within their environments. And what I have seen over time, and you know this too, Reverend Dr. Sandy, is that the process unfolds. The more you attend, the stronger your vibration becomes and becomes more. I think you and Deborah Smith have been the two that have attended the most. And I have seen the unfolding of people as they come, and even the magnetism that they extend out to the larger community. So by proxy, even though it's not focused solely on women, I do have some upcoming women-only events, and many of the women who recruit me to come are women. It is expansive and changing, and along with what we are supposed to be doing. Some of the work that we're supposed to be doing, and that healing paradigm, and that energy that is to collect, transform, or recreate ourselves, a renewing of ourselves as women, especially as Black women.
Exactly. Yeah, because the last time we were together in Tuskegee a couple of weeks ago,
Yes, oh, that's right.
I was so under that I fell off the chair.
I saw. I was trying to say, "Oh no, from the kids go."
And I just stayed there. I was like, "Oh, it was cool," you know. So
yes.
that is something that we're not normally taught, how those sounds affect us. And you know, we have noise coming at us all the time, be it the radio, be it the sound of cars, or you know, and so it becomes pollution.
Yes.
Right?
That's right.
So how important is what you do? Because you marry meditation and sound together to create a modality where a person can literally go within and just, it has to affect the cellular levels,
most certainly. Certainly. This is my arena. So what happens is, and I like the term of marrying sound and meditation. And, you know, there's some schools that talk about meditation that you sit quietly or you say a mantra. I have discovered in my processes that the combination of sound, using the instruments of Tibetan bowls, crystal bowls, chimes, gongs, adds to the quickening of what you experience when you undergo meditation, years of meditation. So for example, you know, the part that I do is I do a washing of the body, of the stress that's in the body, and then there's an attunement which occurs when the bells and the sound and the bowls are played. And what happens is the sound represents what we call like ambient sound, natural sound. So you would say, if minus the traffic sounds in the cars, you would be hearing birds, you'll be hearing trees, you'll be hearing the wind. So the replication of that natural environment is infused into the notes of the bowls that I play. And so what happens, the cells resonate to that sound. And they are like rejoicing and very happy, because oftentimes we're on the grind, we're very busy, we don't get a chance to be at peace and be at one, or just to be in the present moment. And so the sound meditation experience allows one to get into that zone of receptivity, of deep relaxation, so that they can experience miraculous activities, either be it deep and profound rest, because so many of us are sleep deprived. They can experience out-of-body experiences. They can experience visitations by beings in a room and beings that you can see and not be seen. And it's not to like woo-woo anybody. I have just seen the transformation as an energy worker myself, because I've been trained in Reiki as well, to see varying forms of deposits, if you must say, in the room. And I see how it harmoniously works on individuals who attend and experience it. So back to the point about your cells are made up and your organs are together with your cells. In the meditation experience, the cells get an opportunity to work on whatever might be some dis-ease or dysfunction that might be going on in the body temple. So I don't like to say necessarily, and people have said this, that I'm a healer per se, because we don't want to get into the issues of old practicing medicine without a license. I just say we work in the realm of helping the body to heal itself.
Restoring.
Yes.
So it's a powerful work, and until one can experience it, it's really difficult for someone to really understand exactly what it is that has happened. So you have been under the tutelage of quite a few masters.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Yes. When my godmother calls them, and I'm so not good with African names, but my Oluwes that have come to me, and I think it actually begins with your initial conversation that my beginning master was probably my mother, more than likely my mother, someone who worked in a very quiet medicine way in her own life, who imbued in me these systems of healing. Like there was at points when she would say, my brother may have a bath. Walk down, and I'm from the north, I'm from Jersey, so she was to go walk down to this lot and pick up this particular herb that was growing in abundance in the lot, take it back home and boil it, throw something in there, and he's recovered. So that was my original master, all due respect to her. And then along the ways I have found varying people, individuals who have helped me along this way, who have helped to flourish something that was already there that was just waiting to come out.
It's incredible to give honor to your mother like that.
Absolutely.
That's because now it's all about monetizing the healing herbs and the healing concoctions, and
Yes.
like you say, for it to just be freely growing
Absolutely.
in the lot. That's awesome.
And it still is. We just don't know it. I mean, there's so many things that are around us now that are growing in abundance, or in some aspects, very scarce in different areas, that you can take and apply to the skin or ingest that is healing. But we've gotten away from this. We've gotten so, like you said, everything's become monetized in a pharmaceutical pill or brand that encourages us to get away from our natural state of being, instead of looking and studying and understanding what is truly available to us.
So you continuously learning
Absolutely.
and growing, and you travel
Mhm.
like all over the place, right?
Yeah.
So tell us about that experience.
So I love traveling. It's my mother used to travel in her dreams. So she would never get on a plane, but she would travel often, different places. And now that I've been to those places, I completely understand where she's been. I'm like, oh my gosh, my mother's been here. But that's for a whole other discussion. But yes, travel was instilled in my life in an early age. I think my father, when I was probably in the third grade, took me on my first plane to leaving JFK Airport, going to Florida, and looking out expansively over the ocean. And from that point on, I had been in love with getting on a plane and seeking out the ocean. So early on in my life, I was blessed to work for the Boston Women's Health Book Collective. They wrote a book called Our Bodies, Our Selves. And in that, I became their ambassador, and they sent me all around the world. And I met many women on the international women's health, feminist movements, and have traveled the continent many times over attending various conferences, doing presentations. So travel is a part of my life, and it connects me with meeting people, and allows me to grow and to just watch people in their natural state. I don't even have to do much, just be and to watch. So yes, it's something I love to do, and I've just learned the beauty of this country in and of itself, that there are so many pockets that we don't visit here, and we don't know about, that there's so much that we have to learn, and I combine that with my love of art. So yes.
That's interesting. Sometimes we don't realize that the learning is just in observation,
Yes.
or not having preconceived ideas about what you're to learn from a situation.
Absolutely.
And the pockets that you're talking about, there could be various pockets like on the same block.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
When I grew up in same block, my hood was Whiten Street in Jersey City, and then you went over 2 blocks over with Pacific Ave, and it was something totally different that went down. So taking those early learning experiences have allowed me to use that lens, that when I go travel, there's this sensitivity that is, used to be a thing, people used to say traveling with the ugly American, how Americans can often get when they travel abroad, become, arrogant, demanding. And I just learned to separate myself from the group and blend in and just, be amongst the people.
Right,
And to
right.
learn.
In how important is that, as far as your consciousness go, to be able to travel? How What do you think is that connection?
Well, as part of the diaspora, that's the one thing. My first international trip. Well, that wasn't my first international trip, but the first time I went to continental Africa, I went to Uganda, and it was such a powerful experience that, as an African American traveling back to Uganda, traveling back to Africa, back to Uganda, interesting, back to Africa, activated something. You know, there was something very spiritually ceremonial for me. People say, "Oh, you know, often I don't go to Africa and I don't get this feeling." I did. I had a blessed experience when I traveled to Uganda. There was something that was in the air. There was a smell that was in the air. There was a feeling amongst the people. And despite the poverty, they had just come out of years of war, they were some of the kindest, nicest people on the planet that I ever met. And the traveling part is very important, because we're from the diaspora, and coming from Africa, whether you want to accept it or not, we traveled in different places and different ports, so we are spread out across the world. Puerto Rico, Cuba, the Caribbean, you know, Mexico, all over the world we come from. And it's important for us to know that just don't stay in your locale. You have to expand your consciousness. Just as we expand our consciousness as people involved in the healing practice, we have to expand our consciousness in knowing who is of the world. Mm-hmm. Especially now, since it's changing so much.
Yes. Great. What suggestions, advice, recommendations would you give people that are wanting to have the experiences, or some of the experiences that you've had in the traveling, but can't necessarily financially afford to do that? Because I'm sure there's a richness in that.
Well, you know, there are many opportunities to travel. There are many opportunities to do whatever you want to do. You just have to put the energy and the intention behind it. There are trips that people can take, group trips. There are travel agents who are willing to support you and work with you. I mean, you can buy trips now on a layaway plan. So I think if you want to do something, you put your energies to doing it, and everything else will magnetize toward it. There are no limits here. There are no limits here. I don't believe in that.
So here you hear it from April Taylor. She is just phenomenal in keeping her options open and helping you to see the same thing, that if you want it, you can do it, but you must first of all make that commitment that is something that you want to do. And she gives honor to her ancestors, to her mom and her grandmother, and the spirits of the ancestors, to where she is. And she's such an open vessel to receiving all of this. And so we so appreciate you being with us and being a part of us. And we will have an opportunity to hear some of your music. We'll add that on to this recording as well, just so people can get a taste of exactly what that sound therapy talks about. And is there anything else or that you would like to leave with the audience, or contact information?
Yeah, I know we've talked about a lot, and in terms of my experience, especially with travel and work, the work that I do embraces all of those experiences, and that's why I think the sound experiences that people have attending my sessions are very powerful, because it's just not an opportunity just to sit there and just to be and meditate. It's a full experience that has range and it has depth, and it's a part of my intention of making the world and the community better. So I do that through these processes, through these steps, and it sound not only changes the individuals in the room, but it expands and extends beyond the community and beyond the world. So that's what I would leave with.
Sound is unity.
Thank you.
Thank you, April.
Part of the experience of working with women, a lot of my training and experience came from the early days of working with the National Black Women's Health Project. Back in the day, we had women's circles in Boston. I remember that Billy Avery had the Black Women's Health Project here in Atlanta, and it was this like like the mecca for Black women to come annually to meet and to learn and to exchange and to hear from one another. And I met some fantastic people in those settings, and it reminded me of the power of who we are as Black women. And you know, capitalism has done a job on us. It's done an intense job and has isolated many of us and taken away communities with gentrification, different things. So we don't have those same supports that we used to have in community. Like growing up, if my mother wasn't here, I know people say that, and I think that the young generation that doesn't even know this, that my mother wasn't around. I had my neighbors, my neighbors in the neighborhood who look after me, and they honestly, truly would do that. And it's so diffused now. It's so missing because social media has taken a great place of our interaction one-on-one with people that has taken us away from who we actually are. So yeah, there's a lot that we have to unlearn, to reclaim, to relearn about who we are as women, and the power that we have as Black women to do major things. And I say, even with small money, you can do so much on a small budget. That's one thing I learned when I used to travel internationally a lot, is that a lot of women in India inspired me a great deal because they managed to change major systems with little or no money, just having community work together.
And that's so important, that togetherness, that unity
Yes.
of women, because that's a very strong power.
Yes.
And so the systems that would have humanity not accept and honor the strength of who they are would definitely look to the feminine energy first,
Yes.
because that's the energy that gives life to life.
Yes.
And so it's important that we pay honor and give credit and respect to those. You're talking about the ladies in India,
Yes.
the within your own family, within that neighborhood that you grew up in, you know, so that we start coming together and supporting one another and becoming that village.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. That village, that community is a mighty force, and that's why I think there are systems that put us at bay with one another, so that we don't create that community, that we don't have that system, that we're isolated, that we're little groups here and there, and no one sees the larger picture of actually who we are. And I do think that working in holistic health or complementary health, whatever you want to call it, is a major vehicle to help us bridge those gaps for us to come together.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Love and wellness. Life, love and wellness.
Yes, thank you, Sandy. My name is Tammy Kinney, and I live in Winder. I live in Winder, Georgia, and Winder is considered the rural area. I've been an advocate for women's rights, people who are living or diagnosed with HIV. The main thing that I really want to say about myself is it's a quote by Dr. Martin Luther King that says, "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter." And when I take a look at my life and my community, I know there has to be a change.
And when you speak of your community in rural Georgia, can you help the listeners to understand? So, like, what's the biggest difference between the city and the rural area?
Having access to a lot of different things, such as transportation to medical care, HIV awareness, mental health services, even when you have to go to places like going to the Social Security office, just meeting the daily basic needs that are important to live a happy and productive life. A lot of times I know as a woman, I listen to the other stories of other women that are living in the rural, and a lot of times they feel like they're handicapped because they can't get to certain places that they may learn some things that they can bring back to the community. And I do know HIV is one of the things that I am an activist and an advocate about. In the rural area is lack of testing sites. And then a lot of time when you go to the health department, you may have to pay. Those are some issues that concerns me. And then I look at domestic violence, unhealthy relationships, transportation issues, healthcare issues, all these things tying in together that affects people that are living in the rural area.
So as you discover new areas that are not addressed here in the rural area, how do you respond to those needs?
A lot of times I become angry. A lot of times within myself, I wonder, am I doing enough for my community? But I also take what's going on in my community or other rural communities to open forums in the metropolitan areas, because the rural do exist, and I don't want to feel like we're left behind. You know, they talk about the metropolitan areas, they talk about the things that go on, and they say the southern states. But I would like to see southern rural states or southern rural communities. And that's the part. About 5 years ago, a lady came to me and said, Tammy, you do a lot for all the other organizations, and you live here next to 10 rural counties. Why don't you do something in the community that you live in? And I actually said, what? So you know, I really wasn't thinking very well, because I do this type of work, but I do it with other organizations. So I talked to some ladies, I prayed about it, and I came up with the name Rural Women in Action.
You guys are dynamic.
Thank you.
What are some of the areas that your organization address?
We address stigma. We address HIV and AIDS. We address domestic violence. We do testing. We collaborate with other organizations and do testing. We talk about going back into the work field. We address all the needs that are beneficiary to people that are living in the rural area. We also talk about Alzheimer's in the Black community. We talk about breast cancer, ovarian cancer, things that are not discussed in our communities. And when I say our communities, I'm talking about the African American community, the Black community. And mental health is what we really need to talk about. It's another component, because a lot of times what we don't do in our culture is get to the root cause of really what's going on with us so we can be free.
That's a powerful statement. So if there are issues, mental health, emotional wellness,
Yes.
if those are some underlying areas that need to be addressed, how do you go about in a small community like this? How do you go about waking people up to really have that discussion? Do you bring in, people from other areas, or?
I do, but everything that I do, I pray about it first, because I could put something together on my own and it just be something I don't put together. But I like to give it some substance. So the people that I know, I talk to them about it. I talk to my community first. And if I have to bring in outside speakers, it's okay. It's okay. because the same message that I carry, they also carry. And I don't know everything. So I bring in leaders from other communities to share their stories and their experience and their ideas, innovative ideas, and I want to say that. And then I start forming these conferences and workshops, and it's been working in my community and in other small surrounding communities.
But you're not just working in your community. You're like in metropolitan Atlanta, in Fulton County. You're in Gwinnett County. You have another organization, Sassy 60s.
Yes.
You have this organization. And so you're doing like all of these events that are concerned with women and women's rights.
Yes.
I know you also participated in the National Education Association and their conferences that they hold. So you make sure that you're well-rounded and you're well-grounded with the things that you're learning. And so when you come back to your community, are you providing that information like in a newsletter or at church, or how do you get that information back to your community?
Social media. My granddaughter gave me the tips and everything about how to do the Facebook and the social media, so I'm getting kind of good with that. Social media is one of the greatest tools when it comes to awareness and sharing information. So I do have a Facebook page that's Rural Women in Action. My church and communities. I make flyers, I post flyers, and other people share what I do as well. So that's one of the forms, the different forms of how I get the information out to other people, especially those who are on Facebook. Now, if it's someone that's not on Facebook, the flyers, and then a lot of people come to me and say, Tammy, what is Real Women? What are they going to do next year? Or do you think you can put this together? And it works and it just fits right in. It's been a diverse type of leadership from different areas, from Atlanta. This year we had some awesome speakers. Wow. Of course, you came back, Sandy, and then we had some people from Franklin County that had a whole different type of story, but it impacted the conference so greatly. It was greatly needed. Yeah.
And so what are some of the subjects? I really appreciated your target audience for this year, which were boys, young men, and grown men. So it was under construction.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I wasn't sure what the title of the conference was going to be. We always use the title, Transformation plus Information equals Empowerment, right? So transforming minds. But this year, I formed a team. Well, actually, it's the same team every year. They're so powerful. And as you know, Sandy, with your help and your being so diligently involved, we came up with the title Under Construction. And that means that when you look at a construction site, they're putting things together. If they're not putting it together, they're breaking it down. And a lot of our young men today, they call them the millennium, the X generation, the unknown. They're broken. Okay? It may not look like it on the outer surface, but they're broken. Because if their parents are broken, then the children are broken. So let's not get the idea that it's all about the children. We have to bring the parents in. So this year's conference, we just broke down and got to the root of what's really going on. And it's not only the young boys and the young men. And like I said, it's in the home. So we address issues of loneliness, drug use, drug dealing, wanting to be the kingpin, and half of them really didn't know what kingpin. They didn't know what that really meant. They just heard it on TV, looked at a movie, or somebody else in the community used the word. We even talked about the pants hanging down. But then we also talked about, what is your purpose? Everybody has a purpose. And the job that you did, Sandy, with those kids, to me, I mean, they do so much more than the other groups because they're young and they see their vision. So this was also vision focused. And I like what you did about one of the two individuals you had in the group. They built a house. And you know, back in the day when we had a candy lady in the community, I love what your students did. They built a house and the lady was selling dumplings. So bringing those ideas and keeping young minds fresh is really major. Yeah. Well, my son spoke first, him and a cousin of ours. So I could relate to his issues and his feelings as a parent. Because I myself was broken. So if I was broken, my children were broken. So when they first opened up the conference, and my cousin, the young lady that spoke, they spoke together, she was also broken. So in my mind, I said I wanted to give the people something that they can think about. Not 1 day, 2 days, but I want them to really reflect back on what happened today. So my son spoke about, it was called the symbolic apology. And the cousin talked about, she was doing the apology, and my son was talking about the apology coming on a spiritual level. And it was just so awesome. That brought tears to my eyes because I actually never seen my son perform. This is the second time that I've seen him perform doing spoken words. So that was awesome. And our guest speaker, our featured speaker, you know, I believe it's so much race issues in the world today, but everybody's dealing with the same thing. So I just really still today, I understand how separation comes, but we just can't even be separated. So the featured speaker just really laid his life out for us. And it showed how you can actually turn your life around even in the midst of doing something wrong and you're thinking about doing something right. And I know everybody has been there before. You're doing something wrong, but you're thinking about something that should be right. So that's what that particular featured speaker, he brought to life. So it was a really awesome day. Yes. I do have a team, and you're part of that team, because I have learned over the years, it is nothing wrong with taking suggestions and looking at it for what it is really worth, because we can't do this stuff by ourselves. And I keep in mind my spiritual nature has a lot to do with me making right choices. Walk in your authentic self. And that has stayed with me before Rural Women in Action has ever started. And because I remember wearing the mask, wanting to be somebody that I wasn't, all that other stuff. So I take suggestions. I listen to other people's thoughts. I pray about it. And I use what is important, not only to me, but to them, and mostly for the community, because that's what matters. You know, I hear the phrase, one person can make a difference. And I'm good with that. But a whole lot of people coming together for the same cause, to help somebody else and not be selfish about it when it's a need, is a powerful thing. Because if I need you because it's something in the area that I'm not familiar with that needs to be addressed, and vice versa. So coming together as a community, whether you're in the metropolitan area or the big city with all these lights, we have a common thread. We have a connection, and the connection is that we are human beings that know what it feels like, whether it's being lonely, having an addiction, being in an unhealthy relationship. And we are in unhealthy relationships with ourselves, especially when we don't know who we are. So what I want to be able to leave in this interview, but to be connected with somebody that moving forward, that loves life, love people, and want to see people be successful. So if we can do that collectively, then we can sleep good at night.
Love and wellness. Life, love, and wellness.
Welcome everyone. My name is Ann Dillard and I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. My specialty is working with teens, particularly teen girls. Having grown up as a teen girl with a very troubled past, attachment issues, abandonment issues, abuse, it was important to me to work with teens because I saw myself in them, and taking the time to help them navigate their teenage years, it's very important to me. Being a teenager can be a very traumatic experience. This is a time when young people are, in that in-between. They're not quite a child, but they're not an adult yet. And so it's a high transitional period in their lives. And so having people like myself in their life who can be consistent, who can be loyal is very, very important to teenagers. I've worked with teenagers in high schools and in middle schools, but predominantly in middle schools. And over the past 4 years, I've ran a mental health clinic out of middle school, a couple of middle schools, to help teenagers navigate not just their family lives, but also academic issues, peer challenges, and just everyday living as a teen in America, which is pretty challenging. I remember, I don't know if you knew this, but I migrated from Jamaica when I was 13 years old. And I remember before coming to America, my aunt said to me, she said, when you go to America, you need to stay away from American teens because they all do drugs. And so I thought that was interesting. And the funny part of the story is, as I was traveling through the New England towns to Connecticut after, getting off the plane in New York, I kept seeing different stores and they were saying, drugstore. So I was thinking in the back of my mind, oh my gosh, no wonder American teens do drugs because they could go buy it in the store, right? So it wasn't for a while, until a while after that, I realized that what's called drugstore in America is really pharmacies in Jamaica, right? And so I was thinking that, growing up in my home, the more American I became, the less Jamaican I was and the less relatable I was to my family. So I spent a lot of time feeling isolated and trying to navigate both worlds. And I imagine that was difficult for my parents. And then, lately I've been thinking, I wonder if they thought I was on drugs or something because I was changing, I was assimilating. I needed to do that so that I could survive in school, because being a teenager, being in the 8th grade and being different is not what I wanted to be. I wanted to fit in. But yeah, it was difficult to fit in because I am who I am and I don't fit in. But as much as I could, if I could reduce the stigma of being that girl, the Jamaican girl, that would help me to navigate. And that has helped me in some instances. And so I find that it's easier for me to relate to teen girls who are going through those kinds of transitions, family issues, because I understand the pain of not being able to feel supported by your family or even feel like you fit in with your family. I understand the struggles of being separated from what you knew to be true, your culture, and having to start over and relearn a new way of living. And so that helps me to identify with that population. Some of the transitions that I work with girls who are going through, there's a large population of girls who have to navigate what happens in their home when their moms start dating somebody else who's not their father. That creates a lot of struggles amongst our teen girls. And so helping them and helping the family to navigate those issues so that they can bring about some kind of healing, restructuring of the family, rebuilding and protecting that bond is one of the things that I enjoy doing as well. And so not only do I work with teens here in the United States, but I also work with teens on the mission fields in Africa, particularly Senegal, West Africa, where my nonprofit organization takes me. Project Safety Nets, I started that in, 2008, so approximately 10 years ago that started. And it's a nonprofit organization that works to support women and girls in particular in 3 specific areas of health, education, and sustainable lifestyle. And working with teenagers there looks like one of the initiatives that we have is collaborating with organizations like Days for Girls and Rotary International to provide hygiene kits for girls. And you say hygiene kits, and in those hygiene kits what we have washable pads, we have underwear, washcloths, and they're placed in these Ziploc plastic bags and put in a drawstring backpack so that the girls can use those things to navigate their cycles. Something that's so natural, but it keeps girls from getting educated because 1, they might not be able to afford a pad or during their cycles, or 2, they might not have access. And so giving a girl a kit that's washable and that will last 3 years is saying, opening up the world of education to them. So those are some of the things that I do in my work with girls across the world.
Those are some excellent projects, goals, and intentions that you have, especially when you're talking about the change of the atmosphere within the homes with parents. Because it could be either a mother or a dad that's single and that's dating someone else other than their parent. So can you elaborate a little bit more on that? So what are some of the issues that a young person would face in that?
Yes, that's a really, really hard transition for young people one, you're used to your family life and your family structure. It could have been you and mom or you and dad for, as long as you can remember. And now the dynamics of your family is changing because somebody new is coming into your household. And, sometimes what I've experienced is when parents fall in love, they don't necessarily think about the child. They're thinking about, I'm in love, I found my forever love, not necessarily how am I going to help my child transition. It's like, if I'm okay, they'll be okay. But sometimes we have to really slow things down and think about, how will this affect my child? And help your child to navigate the changes that's going to happen in the family, and taking time to listen to them as well, because inadvertently a lot of times what happens is we teach our teenagers in ways that really stifles their intuition and their feelings, and they're not validated in so many ways. So to be able to have that conversation and help them walk through it to a point where they can feel comfortable engaging somebody new. Because imagine, for example, a mom falling in love with someone, and her life is like, oh wow, she's so excited about the possibilities, and her teenage daughter is like, well, what's going to happen to me? I'm left out now. Where do I fit in these dynamics? And add into that, a lot of times there's geographical movement that happens with the change in relationships, and taking into consideration the loss that child is experiencing, the grief that he or she is experiencing, is very important to take that into consideration. Because if that's not addressed appropriately, and if they're not helped to not navigate that and to help build a relationship with this new partner appropriately, it could manifest in so many different ways. And the first way that we see it is, a lot of times, is we see it showing up in the academics and the behaviors at school, because the child usually doesn't necessarily know how to speak on what's happening or even understand what's happening, because they're going through so many different changes and feelings and emotions, and not know what to do with them. And so it's important that the parents are tuned in to their children and help them navigate that, because it's not just their relationship, it's the relationship of everyone who's involved.
Great advice. So do you find that there's unique differences with the life circumstances that our young girls face here in America as opposed to Africa, or are they basically the same?
Well, when I was growing up in Jamaica, I would say it's a little different. But now, with instant access to the internet, both in America and abroad, they're becoming more of the same. What I'm seeing in Africa is, I still see the connection of the family. A lot of the families are still intact. That's not to say that they don't have their own challenges within the family. Whereas working with teens in America, I see a lot of dysfunction, a lot of disconnected families, a lot of abandonment, and a lot of transitions that's happening in their lives and in their families. So in that sense, I would say it's different. But like I said, the internet is really, really changing the face and the lives of families.
What advice would you give the parents in general, or if you want to speak on something specific, of course that is allowable, but is there anything that really touches you that you would like to speak on?
Well, a few weeks ago, one of my friends contacted me, and she was, she was alarmed and she didn't know what to do. What she found out, she found her daughter's social media account and found somebody was in her inbox. And from looking at the messages, it wasn't anything too alarming, but what my friend noticed was a progression of what seems to be grooming. And so an adult male was in her daughter, she's probably about 12, 13, was in her inbox grooming her, sending her gifts, nothing big like a journal or things like that. And I think one of the things that parents have to be really, really cautious about is their children's use of the internet and how much access they have and who's in contact with them. And try as they may, it's very hard, and kids are very smart, and there could be one site up today and tomorrow it's gone. But there are so many different sites and apps that are really disguised. It looks like one thing, but behind the scene, there's so many other things happening. And so if you take that for a girl who is probably in a broken home, missing her mom who's working to keep a roof over her head, or missing dad who's not there anymore, or dad could be working and have that much time, and somebody is giving her that much attention and sending her gifts without parental supervision, that's ideal for human trafficking. And I don't think that we're talking enough as parents to our children about stranger danger, because we think we meet somebody on the internet and they're instantly your friend, and they understand me so well and we connect so well, and they know me and they know me better than my own parents do. But yet that's setting you up for a life of horror.
Explain grooming.
Grooming to me is what you see when someone is trying to win somebody over. Like they're trying to win this teenager over in a way that she or he no longer feels like this person is a stranger. Okay, so they will pick up different things that you are saying and communicating with him or her and use that to say, see how much I understand you, see what I can do for you, I can make your life better. And it doesn't happen all at once, it's a progression. And you become more and more attached to this person who is in fact manipulating you and winning your trust and seem very loyal. And so you have no reason not to trust them.
You had a very interesting, you made a very interesting statement when you said him or her. So are you saying then that there are also women that are on the internet that can groom the young people?
Absolutely. And there are women who are grooming girls and grooming boys alike. And I remember one case I was working with, this one young woman was being groomed by a young girl. And she thought, oh my gosh, I found my best friend. And next thing you know, we're putting out an Amber Alert for this young girl because she was groomed and led away by somebody a female that she trusted, or she developed a trust in.
Is that common?
It's very common. It is very common. And so with the absence of parents, for whatever reason, if you're busy working, you're busy caught up in your own life, or you might be on drugs or whatever the distraction is from true parenting, with that distraction and the absence of a parent who's functioning as a parent, there's so much room and so much space for other things to come in and other people to come in to your life and fill that void. And that's being done. A lot of kids who are led into, for example, trafficking we're talking about, they're not necessarily taken against their will. They meet up, they plan to meet up, they're not exposed to the full danger of the relationship that they're in.
Because trafficking is really becoming a huge problem here in the United States.
Absolutely, and abroad as well. And I think we were watching a show last night that said that it was like a $300 billion industry. So it's very prevalent, and I don't think we're talking about it enough. And some people might say, well, my child is too young to even think about that. But if you have access, your child have access to the internet, they are always at the risk of being engaged in something like that.
And that grooming is a first step, correct? Is that what you're saying?
And exactly. Because the first thing to do is to build trust, and and once you feel like you trust this person, even though you've never met them, they're no longer a stranger to you. And some kids will say, well, I trust them more than I trust my mom or my dad. There's no reason. Your parents, they're a violation in your relationship with your parents. And, this person has never violated me, or they've never been disloyal, or they've never let me down. They've never had to punish me or anything like that. And so it's easy to become attracted to that kind of caregiving.
And you serve youth around the world. What have you learned most from the youth that you serve?
Oh my goodness, where should we start? I've learned so much because learning happens both ways. So as I'm serving, I'm learning. And, what I've realized, no matter where I am, is that, for example, teenagers, they need the basic things. They need to know that they're loved and cared for. They need to know that they're not a burden. And they need to know that they're valuable. And that's in whatever language, whatever country, wherever you go. They need those more than they need, the brand name and the technology and all those different things. They need to know that. And they also need to know that you're going to be loyal. And that's, with the absence of loyalty, it's easy for them to be attracted to other things that appears pleasant.
Right.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
And you have a radio program?
I have a Facebook live show, and it's called Teen Talk Live with Miss Ann, and that comes on Monday evenings, Eastern Standard Time at 8 p.m. And I also have a private practice where I serve teen girls under KIP Consulting Services. I also am a part of an anthology that's coming out. It's 12 of us that contributed to this anthology. It's called Unchain My Legacy. And in that anthology, 12 women speak about what are they doing in their lives now to make things better for their future and the future of their children. So that's being released this summer. It's called Unchain My Legacy.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So as we talk around this theme of life, love, and wellness,
Yes.
is there a parting thought, word, advice that you would give to those that are observing, that are looking at this webinar?
Absolutely. When I think about life, love, and wellness, I think about something that I wrote a few days ago is that hurt girls become hurt women, who then become hurt mothers and raise hurt children. So to heal that, if you can look at your own pain and your own journey, then you can begin to do something differently. And I don't think it's ever too late. You might say, my kids are not teenagers anymore. Well, mine aren't. But it's never too late to look at your own health, your own choices, and your own lifestyle, and make amends for that, and do the changes that you can to make sure that you're paying your own emotional debt, right? Because a lot of times we pass on our emotional debt from generation to generation, and we call it generational curse. And we feel like we can't do anything about that. But if we learn how to pay our own debt, then we'll stop passing it on. And then we'll stop taking from the other generation. And I think that's one of the best ways to heal ourselves, so we can have better lives. And if you can heal yourself emotionally, then the physical will fall into line. You don't have to eat about it anymore, or you don't have to find drugs or something superficial to fill that void. And so I wish everyone emotional healing.
Love and wellness. Life, love and wellness.
Thank you so much for having me on your program, Reverend Sandy. My name's Robert Wadley, and I'm originally from Atlanta, but I moved here into Hillsborough, North Carolina a couple of years ago after I was recently laid off from corporate America. And my story really begins a while back. In 2010, I was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer, and I went through the traditional chemo and radiation therapies to address that, Western medicine. And then a friend of mine told me about the Raw Foods Institute in Atlanta, which is founded by Brenda Cobb. And I went through their program. They had I believe it was a 10-day program that I went through, and it actually brought me back to life after I went through that chemo and radiation. Some days I couldn't get out of bed because they had me on these opiates, and I couldn't really do too much during the day. But after changing my diet, eating a more plant-based diet, gave my body what it needed to heal itself, and I was able to actually return to work and regain my productivity. So I credit that all to a diet change. So I'm a proponent. Right now I do lectures and talks on how to increase a more plant-based diet in your lifestyle, so that you can, your body can basically heal itself, and you can get off some of those medications they have you on, because nowadays the doctors are prescribing one medication for one symptom, and that's all they're doing is treating the symptom. But then the pill they give you has so many different side effects, they have to give you another pill to address those. So some clients I have been on like 15 pills a day, and it's kind of bad to see that, that's the way pharmaceuticals are going, trying to make some money off of people who are really at their will, So that's why I try to inform people of a better way to do it, and a simple change in adding more vegetables or fruits to your diet can assist your body into maintaining its health or regaining its health. And right now What I'm doing is actually, the name of my company is Raw Food, the number 4, Raw Food Prep, the number 4 Life. And you can look me up on Facebook. There's a Facebook page there where I'll post some different easy to make recipes that you can do with your family or your kids to get them started into eating healthy instead of, always going to McDonald's and stuff like that.
I remember when you were first diagnosed and I came to visit and you were like barely moving. It seemed like it took all your effort just to walk across the room, and then you had a dinner, a celebration shortly after the 10 days, and you were literally just jumping around the house, and I was like, oh my God, what's up?
Yeah, that's a testimony to the process that I went through with the Living Foods Institute in Atlanta, because they address the whole person, the body, the soul, and the spirit, and get you into the right frame of mind to kind of help your body heal itself. Instead of getting all bent out on your diagnosis per se, they want you to see yourself already as whole and healthy. And that way you can focus on that goal instead of bringing up, all the negativity with the diagnosis that you got from a doctor.
And that 3-part or 4-part method is what you do with your clients as well?
Yes, basically I first give them some information about nutrition. I'm not a nutritionist, but I am a chef and I'm a certified raw food educator. So I tell them instruct them on how to increase their plant intake during the day. And it could be as simple as, just bringing a salad for lunch instead of going out to eat for lunch. You bring your own salad, and that way you can kind of control your portions as well as what's going into it. And I give them some brief, recipes on how to make their own salad dressing instead of buying salad dressing from the store. And that seems to give them something to start with, something basic and easy to do. And like I said, if you include your kids into the process, then they'll get that attitude of wanting to eat healthy as well, during their lifetime.
Why is it important to make your salad dressing versus buying it out of the store?
Well, with store-bought products, if you read the labels, you're going to see these words that you can barely pronounce, and you know that if you can't pronounce it, it's probably not going to be good or healthy or organic for your body to kind of metabolize and make use of. So more than likely it'll go to fat, if it doesn't know what to do with it. If it can't eliminate it, it'll just put it in a fat cell, and you'll be storing that for a while until you can kind of release that. And it's always good to know what you're putting in your body temple, because nowadays even the FDA, you can't really trust the FDA to be 100% sure of what's going on with our food supply. And if you also are aware of some of the trends in the meat production and poultry industries, you may want to think twice about eating meat at all. Yeah, so there's a lot to learn, and like I said, you don't have to know it all to begin. You just take one easy step. You don't have to see the end of the staircase to just take that one step and say, hey, I want to take control of my health by eating properly and giving the body, nourishment that it can actually use. So I do a lot of, I do some smoothies and juices and a lot of salads. Yeah.
So when you started the 10-day program 8 years ago, wow, in 2010 you said,
yes.
Right? So when you started that 10-day program, did you believe that it was going to work? Did you hope it was going to work? Or were you like, man, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired?
At first, I didn't know what to expect, but I knew I had to do something, and it came at a point in my life where I was on short-term disability, and that was about to run out, and I would have to go back to work or, do something. And I know I couldn't go back to work on all of these opioids they had me on. They had me on morphine and stuff like that. So I couldn't really function under those kind of conditions. So I did go to the class. I was able to negotiate a price with Jane. And she's the manager over there. She's very good at getting people the support that they need to make their body whole again. So I was able to go there, and just like I said, they address the whole person, not just the physical part or the nutrition side. They also get into the way you think. And after going through a couple of classes and with them on thinking, you can understand as to why you're not healing yourself, because you're always focusing on the negative instead of the positive. So once I got that out of the way, it was kind of easy to let the universe do the rest. Basically you just had to have faith or understanding that you're a spiritual being on this earth plane having a human experience. And sickness is one of those experiences that some people have to go through to gain a greater spiritual understanding. So it actually helped me, because when I first got into the diagnosis, I could be saying, why me? And all this other stuff. But instead I took the perspective of saying, what am I supposed to learn from this, and how can I be of service to humanity? And that made a whole difference there. With the perspective that you're going into a diagnosis or any kind of treatment with, that is here, it's given to you because you need to learn some kind of lesson, and that way you can share it with humanity and other people going through the same thing you're going through. So it was a really good learning experience. It's kind of like a wake-up call, basically, because right now I'm 59, and I know I'm almost halfway done here, so I need to really get on the stick and do what I'm supposed to do here on this earth plane. So I'm gaining a lot of knowledge in a short period of time, and it's been exciting.
You look extremely healthy.
Thank
You
you.
look like that C word never touched your body.
Right.
So the process with the food, it involves detoxing.
Correct.
Can you explain what detoxing is?
Well, detoxing is basically getting your body to a point where it's going to release all the toxins that you've built up over the years, eating what they call a standard American diet, a SAD diet. So your body's got all these toxins and stuff built up. Like I said, if it doesn't know how to process it and it doesn't eliminate it, it'll go to the fat cells. So once you get on a healthy eating regimen, your body's going to release all these toxins and stuff, and you may go through what they call a healing crisis, which is where you really get sicker before you get better. And some people have to go through it and some people don't. It just depends on what stage your body's at the time you decide to make a move to the positive direction and try to help yourself heal. So detoxing is that period of time where your body's releasing most of its toxicity, and it'll be able to better absorb the nutrition from the better or healthier diet that you're on at the moment.
Is detoxing, do you just do that once? How often?
Well, you can do it. It depends on your conviction, like I said. Some people do it yearly, just as a spiritual practice as well. It's for like fasting or the lemon and cayenne pepper kind of diet some people go on with the honey. And basically that's just to give your digestive tract a break from eating a lot of red meats and stuff that's going to take a while to digest and be absorbed by the system. So detoxing gives your body a break where it'll kind of have that chance to clean up whatever's in your system at the moment and release it, and then get back onto eating a healthy way of life.
Do you speak with a lot of people that have cancer in their body, or?
Well, at the moment, I want to focus on people with cancer who have been diagnosed and help them get past any kind of issues, mental or dietary, where it can support them into allowing the body to kind of assist whatever treatment they're going through. Because a lot of people aren't really into the holistic medicine at the moment, but if they do change their diet, they'll notice that their treatment with Western medicine is going to be a lot easier, and you won't retain a lot of the chemicals that they're putting in your body.
There's a train of thought that cancer cannot be cured, and you must stay on certain medications for the rest of your life for you to stay in remission. What do you say to that?
Well, I say that you're a spiritual being, you're one with God, and there is no disease in God. So once you clear up your thinking, you'll realize that a diagnosis is just something someone said, and you can't really, well, you can take their word for it. Well, I guess you got to take their word for it if they're in the hospital or something like that. But you do have the power to heal yourself, and once you realize that you are a powerful being, you can almost instantaneously go into remission. Like I said, it's all about the way you think about something. You can kind of judge it like good or bad, but nothing's really good or bad. It's just an experience, and it's here to teach you something.
I've heard say that cancer is the accumulation of unresolved traumas or unresolved issues. How do you relate that statement to what you actually experienced?
Well, I can say that during that process where I was going through treatment and stuff, it kind of went through my mind as to how I got this. And I would attribute it mostly to my diet. I was eating a lot of barbecue and, red meats on the grill. And, that's basically, the nurse told me that's what's, killing you, all this red meat that you're eating. And I said, okay, well, I'll definitely look into that. And, but also there is an emotional side. So if you are bottling up a lot of anger or hatred towards someone else, then I would suggest or recommend that you forgive them, not for their sake, but for your own sake, because holding this in your system can make you have some kind of physiological response, and it could like stress your system out to the point where you can develop cancer or some kind of ailment. And it has been determined that different emotions when bottled up or stored in the body will affect certain organs more than others. So I think it's possible if you have a lot of stress going on, or you have some kind of unresolved issue with a family member or a friend, and you're just keeping it all to yourself, then that could affect your health.
Now, I know people watching this are going to be like, you want me to give up my barbecue? Are you crazy, man?
Well, I would say everything in moderation, basically. I'm not 100% vegan, but I do kind of have my plate set up where there's more green stuff on there than red stuff.
Well, that's good. That's good to know, because we have to find our balance in it,
Exactly.
right? Because we can't be too extreme this way or too extreme that way.
Yeah, you'll be setting yourself up for failure if you try to be on a strict diet, because diets don't really work. Basically, when you find something that works for you, because everybody's going to be different, it's bio-individuality, where what may work for you may not work for someone else. So you got to kind of take charge of your health and and kind of realize, what your body's telling you. You got to be in tune with your intuition, and you just know your body, and if you feel an ache over here, then what's going on and what's causing it. And I would also recommend that people get into the practice of spending some quiet time daily, to kind of quiet your mind and just don't think of anything. It could be a meditative practice, or it could just be sitting still for a minute, being disconnected from all the electronics and stuff like that, where you can just take time to listen to the perfect sound of silence. And that way, if you pose a question to yourself, to your higher self, and that quietness, you'll get a response.
You brought up electronics. Talk to us about that.
Well, if you work in front of a computer daily, then you're getting exposed to a lot of what they call EMFs, which is electromotive forces. And you can't feel them per se, but they are going through your body. It's sort of like the shortwave radios, even radio signals from the stations that you listen to daily. That's constantly bombarding your cells and stuff with electromotive force, and this really can exacerbate any kind of issues you may have going at the time. And there was a study where these two ladies, I believe in France, who were really sensitive to the EMFs in their area, and they had to actually live in a cave to be shielded from all of that stuff to live comfortably. But we're all being polluted. We're in a polluted environment right now. The air is polluted, the water's polluted, and it's kind of hard to say that you're going to be in a pristine environment, but you do the best you can, and by giving yourself organic rather than regular vegetables that may have been sprayed with pesticides. And when you wash your vegetables, you're not washing that stuff off. It's still in the vegetable itself. So if you can afford it, I would always recommend to do organic when possible. But there's a list that you can actually download from the web called the Dirty Dozen, and it'll tell you exactly which fruits and vegetables are more highly sprayed with pesticides than others, and which could be safe to eat. If you have a peel on it, then you're more than likely safe to eat that vegetable without having too much concern about pesticides.
So this worldwide wellness movement is about providing helpful information to individuals in a language that can be easily understood, and you've done such an excellent job with that, telling your victory over the C word, right?
Yes.
Is there any additional suggestions, advice, recommendations that you would make to people to continue to live or to start a healthier lifestyle?
Well, definitely get in tune with your intuition and your higher self. That's basically what I'm saying, your spirit. Get it to know your spirit. It will always guide you the right way. And if you follow that, you shouldn't have any problem in life, because you're here for a reason. And once you realize what that reason is, then you can pursue that and live a productive as well as thriving life.
Well, thank you, Mr. Wadley. You have been such an incredible inspiration, and I want people to understand that this man you see before you just 8 years ago was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer, and he is just looking so healthy and radiant and brilliant. So thank you so much.
Thankful and grateful to be here. Namaste. out of quartz crystal, and it's been heated to like 4,000 degrees to get this shape on the mold. And the note that it's playing is F sharp. And this one particular bowl is infused with frankincense. So it's called an alchemist singing bowl, crystal singing bowl. So the vibration goes through your body at the cellular level, which will assist in healing anything that's going on with you. And I also have like tuning forks that do the same thing.
And this is a part of your healing ritual?
Yes, basically I was using it in meditation, preparing a group for meditation or something like that. This will, the frequency vibration of, kind of uplift you.
Love and wellness. Life, love and wellness.
My name is Ramel Moore. Happy to be here with you today. Well, I'm really involved in a number of community organizations. I work with I'm on 3 commissions, Martin Luther King Commission for the City of Canton, and I'm in Canton, Ohio. I'm on the Community Relations Board, which is really our police review board. So where police behave in ways that they should not, when complaints are made, that comes before the board on which I sit as a commissioner. And then one of the fun things I do is I'm a member of the Tree Commission, which I never thought I'd be all that interested in trees, but I've learned a lot about diversity and the importance of maintaining your urban forests. Those are the kinds of things I do. I'm also involved with the NAACP. My husband is a vice president with the NAACP. We're involved with our church. And but my professional life is really surrounding cultural and linguistic competence, and I work with the Stark County Mental Health and Recovery Services Board as a consultant for cultural and linguistic competence, because a lot of people don't really understand it very well. There's a lot that's been done talking about ACEs for children, adverse childhood experiences, and trauma-informed care, that people have a lot of trauma, but primarily this trauma, this kind of baseline understanding of trauma has been based on the majority population. So the cultural and linguistic competence makes us go a step further to think about these other populations, which many times are invisible. They aren't, you really don't see them in the doctor's offices or in the practices or in the mental health organizations, but that doesn't mean they don't have mental health issues. Now, in the African American community, we know that we've always had, Uncle Benny that stayed upstairs in the attic, or Aunt Claire that was, kind of secluded in her bedroom. And really it was how we as a family would deal with someone who has a mental health issue. But we didn't have the terminology. We didn't understand that it was mental health. And now we're growing into that. So I had a really interesting discussion with my cousin here in Portland, and he's working with trauma-informed care, and he's working with the Imani organization, which is specific to African American populations. Well, in Stark County, we're not that far advanced, but we're helping to inform not only the community about going to use the mental health services, but also the mental health practitioners and administrators, so that they have a more welcoming environment. Many times the research shows that if an African American goes to a mental health facility, that generally they will go the first time, they'll complete their intake papers, which are usually that is a tremendous hurdle that people have to overcome, because there's so many questions and people don't know how to answer them. So if they come back the second time, they'll meet the counselor. They'll have some kind of interaction with the counselor. They'll either feel good about it or bad about it, and they may return the third time. But generally, after the third time, they don't come back. Why is that? Yeah. The reason is that many times they don't feel comfortable, because the person who is sitting across from them, who is supposed to be their help and their aid through their problem, is someone who doesn't relate to their problem, is someone who doesn't understand the cultural background of the problem. For example, African Americans are very unique, them and Native Americans, very unique in the United States, because we have a history of mental health issues, but we cope with ours. We have had such high levels of stress. In fact, as the generations progress, we think that the stress has been minimized, but it has not. We have stress in so many other ways, like when you have your black son go outside, you're not sure whether he's going to come back. You are under stress as a mother, waiting until he comes back home safe and sound. At the same time, your son is under stress, because every time he sees a police car go by, he's wondering, are they going to stop me? Are they going to approach me? Hey, just this weekend, there were two guys in a Starbucks restaurant waiting for their colleague to come, which is a typical thing. There were other people waiting there. But what happens to them? The police are called on them. But they handled it very well. The people who were there, and I think it was in Philadelphia where this occurred, but the people who were there, the white customers who were there, were saying, this is wrong. This is wrong. And that also talks about the importance of allies. We've got to have allies in this struggle with racism, because racism is alive and well. And many of us have done that.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, so one of the projects that I did last year, and we're still working on, is I met with African American pastors. Because where do black women tend to take their issues? They take them to the church and they pray about it. They haven't solved necessarily anything, but for the moment, for that service, during the singing and during the preaching, they feel pretty good. But as soon as they walk out, they go back to the home where they are facing all those problems. So they have all this stress that has been minimized or compartmentalized and told, oh, well, just pray about it. God will make things better. Maybe your faith is not strong enough, when really they need to see a mental health professional. But they also need to see a certain kind of a mental health professional, somebody who can relate to them, who understands them, someone who shares that history and background. In other words, another African American. So I met with these African American pastors because we know that many African American women, and most churches, the congregations are full of women who have problems, are going to the church. So my thing was to identify pastors who would be willing to consider or to entertain a partnership with the Stark County Mental Health and Recovery Services Board, so that there would be kind of a gentle hand holding of getting people into the services. But the pastor said, wait a minute, that's a good idea, Ramel. We really like you, we trust you, but how can we trust them? You said a gentle hand holding, but not only that, we know that when we start bringing our population to the Stark County Mental Health, that they will get increased money. They will use it for money, and they will be able to do more programming, and all of this is going to be geared towards the African American population. But what happens with us? What happens with the church who needs money? How do we reap something out of it? What do we get? And I shared my report. I wrote a report which was about 15 pages for mental health, told them all of the things, and then of course my own recommendations. And then it culminated in a meeting that we had in February where we, because I was interviewing the pastors individually. So this was an opportunity to bring people together, and we had about 7 or 8 of the pastors who came, and we met at the mental health facility, and they met with the mental health people, and we had a facilitator come up from Columbus, and they were so frank. I was so proud of my African American pastors as they talked about the issues, and they talked about, we need some real support. We don't want you to just come in like has happened decades after decade after decade. You come into the black community, you get our statistics, you go write your proposals, you get your funding, and then we see nothing, and we receive nothing. And so, they at least they have spoken, so that the head of the executive director of the mental health board in Stark County, he heard them, he said he understood, and now he wants to bring them together with some of the practitioners so that the practitioners can hear those different organizations, child and adolescent and different ones, so that they can hear what the African American pastors have to say and why it is that they don't trust releasing their basically their parishioners over to a mental health facility, because many times the experience has been, we go back historically, well, they said you were a rascal when you were being beat. Well, the problem is that, this was a doctor, I can't remember his name right now, but it was in the 1790s. He came out and said that, the African American men and African men, that their problem was that they were rascals, and when they weren't behaving and succumbing to slavery, that the fact that they wanted to be free was they saw it as, well, they're crazy. And so they did have mental health facilities for African Americans in the 1790s and the 1800s, but it was because they misinterpreted how people were trying to cope with slavery, and then after that, the whole Jim Crow thing. I mean, we have a historical legacy of mental health abuse as a community by the larger community treating us as less than human. But I write reports on the activities that I have done. So that was what was compelling to Stark Mental Health, which has allowed them to go ahead with this whole thing with the ministers and pastors. If you look at the statistics, the people that go and receive mental health services is about 2 or 3% in the African American community. But the people, just on an average across the nation, people who have mental health issues and needs is an average about 13%. So we have a great percentage, at least 10% of people who have mental health issues who are not even going to see a mental health counselor or receive any mental health services. Not only that, but the statistics show that beyond the average, African Americans have more mental health problems because they have more physical health problems. And because the physical health wears on them, it affects their mental health. And so really then when you start talking about that and clumping that in, you get up to 18, 19, and 20%. 1 out of 5 people needs to really have some counseling and see some professional person about mental health services. But before they will go, there has to be a feeling of trust. If there's no feeling of trust, people are not going to go to receive the services. So I told you in the beginning, I said they're about 3%. But now we're saying that there are 18 or 20% who need to have services. Then if you start thinking really long, and I know you as a health proponent know about the statistics as they relate to African American men and cancer and all the different kinds of things that we have, the high blood pressure, the diabetes, all of those things which come out of your physical health but wear on your mental health. And so we have so many more, so everything is compounded. So if we were just doing it with the average population, that would be 13%. But when you add on to it all of these other things which relate to stress and how we try to cope with stress, which is a daily thing. Remember I said that if you let your child go outside, you are under stress until he returns, and he is under stress until he returns to the safety of his home. And so we are continually under stress as a people and as a community. And we have to really look at our physical health and our mental health, because the two are really intertwined. So we need to know that there is some place that we can go where people understand our issues, understand that we're legitimately upset because there was a killing five streets over. Whereas if you go downtown and you go see the majority, so to speak, person who is a counselor, trained counselor or psychologist, they just see it as a news item and they don't understand. Why are you upset? That doesn't have anything to do with you. Did you know the person? No, well, I didn't really know. Oh, you didn't know the person? What? So why are you upset? But we feel stuff as a community. We don't have to know the person. We know a black person has been hurt, and we know the circumstances under which they were hurt. And we feel that, and we fear it. Be sure to be well. Be well. That's the main thing. Think about yourself and be well. We are always thinking about others. I haven't, I have to say, I didn't think of this, but there is an example I do it in parenting that is through the active parenting process. And it talks about parents and how they give. And so particularly women, and this is all women, but you have a glass of water and you have 3 empty glasses. And you're always pouring in. You're pouring into your children. You're pouring into your community. You're pouring into your church. You're pouring into some other activity. And then at the end of the day, there is nothing left for you. Who pours into you? And many times we have to pour into ourselves. So we have to take that reflection time. We have to have that spiritual time. That's where we get our strength. We as African American people have always used our community as a resource, and it could still be. However, through urban renewal, all of the advances, the convenience of transportation, But what they did with the convenience of transportation in many, many small towns and cities across the country is they've torn up our neighborhoods. We can't get to things because it's on the other side of the freeway, or we can't get to our usual, or they don't exist anymore because the urban renewal has ripped up our urbanity. It has, so it has destroyed from the inside a lot of our sense of community.
Thank you for being with us today. And we know that you enjoyed our awesome, incredible speakers. And we certainly appreciate you as being a part of this groundbreaking historic event. And so we invite you to tomorrow perhaps invite a couple of more of your friends over, or how about at your church or your synagogue or your mosque, invite people and have a viewing party so that you can have a discussion afterwards. And so we look forward to being with you tomorrow with another group, anywhere from 5 to 7 incredible individuals that's going to share of their expertise, their love, their passion, because our speakers cover a wide variety of subjects, and it's things that you can immediately put into effect in your life. So thank you for being with us. We'll see you tomorrow.